Support for the Local Government News Roundup comes from Rath Engineering Development, smarter systems for local government, like Red GMS, helping councils manage gravel pits and projects, track quality, test results, blending options and haulage, and know the true cost per tonne from day one. Rath Engineering Development can give you a one-off report that uses your existing pit data to pinpoint the best gravel sources for your next resheeting program or disaster restoration works, saving your council time and money. For local government systems built from real on-the-ground experience, talk to the team at Rath Engineering Development. Head to rathed.com.au to find out more. Coming up on the Roundup, a council worker convicted of fraud appeals his jail sentence. An apology to artists whose work was damaged in a council chamber. A council calls for a shake-up to the rate cap system in Victoria. A new general manager for Dubbo Council means a vacancy in Alice Springs. A tourism push to recapture that Bondi feeling. A long-serving WA councillor steps down. And a New Zealand council CEO speaks out after public debate turns personal. All of that and more just ahead. Hello, I'm Chris Eddy with another selection of news from and about councils across Australia and beyond. Also today, world-leading civility campaigner Diane Kalen-Sukra with an update on preparations for the second Global Civility Summit, which is just a month away. The Roundup is brought to you by the VLGA, the national broadcaster on all things local government, with support from Symphony 3, simple, connected customer experiences, and Rath Engineering Development, smarter local government systems built from real on-the-ground experience. It's Monday, the 16th of March. Welcome to the podcast. A former City of Greater Geelong employee jailed for fraud is appealing his sentence after admitting to a string of offences involving misuse of ratepayer funds. Ryan Brumley worked as a plant and fleet officer and pleaded guilty to misconduct while a public official and to using false documents across several dates last year. The Geelong Advertiser reported that the court has sentenced him to 3 months in prison, plus convictions and fines, and ordered more than $23,000 in compensation to the council. Council Chief Executive Ali Wasty said a robust internal investigation uncovered the misuse, and she pledged the city's commitment to transparency and strong governance. Marybeck City Council has issued a public apology to 2 artists after changes inside the Coburg Council chambers damaged an artwork on the ceiling. The council says technology infrastructure was installed over several years without consulting the artists, Dr. Jeff Hogg and Xiaobing Zhao. It says the integrity of the work has been harmed and it's deeply sorry. The council says it will now begin a conservation project over the coming months to restore the artwork. Bass Coast Shire Council is calling for a major shake-up of Victoria's rate cap system to ensure long-term financial survival. A motion set for Wednesday's meeting seeks a one-off 6% rate cap adjustment for Bass Coast and 9 other low-rating councils. It's argued that the current cap is a blunt tool that ignores historic funding gaps, with local costs now rising faster than inflation. If endorsed by the council this week, the proposal will be submitted to the Municipal Association of Victoria in May. It's also being asked to support 3 other motions for State Council regarding emergency services funding, regional bus network reform, and concerns about recent planning systems changes. In Melbourne's northeast, Banyule Council says Darebin Parklands has been targeted by suspected wildlife poachers, slipping in on weekends when rangers are not on site. The council says nest boxes in the trees have been broken open and animals may have been taken. Rangers and local Friends of groups use the boxes to monitor urban wildlife, and the council says theft can undo years of conservation work. It's asking anyone who sees people inspecting nest boxes or carrying ladders or other gear to report it to the authorities. Litter can feel like a small local problem until it turns up in waterways, blocks drains and harms wildlife. And across Melbourne's southeast, councils and agencies are now treating it as one shared catchment issue. Glen Eira, Port Phillip and Bayside councils with Melbourne Water and EPA Victoria, have launched the Elster Creek Litter Action Plan, combining education, behaviour change and targeted infrastructure to stop rubbish before it reaches the bay. Glen Ira Mayor Councillor Dr Simone Zamoud says litter doesn't recognise municipal boundaries, and neither should the response. Port Phillip Mayor Alex Macon says the plan is also good news for bird and marine life, as Elster Creek flows into the bay through the Elwood Canal. Now to some other stories making news at the moment. Greater Dandenong Council says the push for more homes near train and tram corridors shouldn't come at the cost of local control. The Star Weekly reported that a draft submission urges the Victorian Government to wind back proposed tower heights in Springvale and Noble Park, up to 16 stories in some deemed to comply zones. Council wants to keep its own structure plans instead, 12 stories in Springvale and 6 in Noble Park, shaped by years of community consultation. The City of Melbourne is testing a new way to let local businesses help shape the streets they trade on and pay for improvements together. The council will consider a voluntary co-investment pilot for Docklands and Collins Street, modelled on business improvement districts used in cities like New York and London. In Hepburnshire, opposition is building to the Western Renewables link as the state moves to speed up land acquisition for new transmission lines. The council says it argued the case at recent hearings, and Mayor Councillor Tony Clark says the new law would let energy companies compulsorily acquire private land before key environmental assessments are finished, and even before the project is formally approved. And keeping aerodromes ready for emergency and medical flights is the bottom line in Yarriambiack Shire, where the council has adopted an aerodrome activities policy, spelling out what can and cannot happen at its CASA-certified aerodromes at Hopetoun and Warwick-Nabil. Mayor Andrew McLean says the council will back aviation uses like flight schools and has endorsed a private hangar at Hopetoun while exploring more fuel options at Warwick-Nabil. Also happening now, Moyne Shire Councillor Karen Foster has been elected chair of the Australian Coastal Councils Association, a national group representing councils dealing with coastal change. Councillor Foster says the new role underlines shared challenges across the country, from erosion to rising seas. Merribeck Council has unveiled the winning design for a new $60 million library and public piazza in Coburg. The 4-storey building would link directly to an open square, creating a new civic anchor for reading, digital learning and community programs. The concept is now on public consultation before detailed design begins. And a new elite hockey team is setting up shop in Melbourne's growth corridor, the Melbourne Cobras, choosing Beveridge in Mitchellshire as its base. The franchise could also fast-track plans for a new multi-purpose sporting facility. The project sits within the Lockerbie Precinct structure plan near the Hume Freeway, and Council says more detail on the proposed facility will be released as planning progresses. The Local Government News Roundup is brought to you by the VLGA, which is holding one of its member-exclusive Lunch and Learn sessions on Friday the 27th of March at 12 p.m. A free event for members exploring psychosocial hazards and the Council's role as the CEO's employer. Attendees will gain insight into the new legislation, understanding the impact of culture, workload and role clarity, and ensuring appropriate systems of support and accountability are in place. Join the VLGA's Head of Local Government Programs and Policy, Dawn Bray, and Managing Partner from Justicia Lawyers, Melissa Scadden, as they break down the responsibilities of councillors under this emerging piece of legislation. Register or find out more at the VLGA website, www.vlga.org.au. Dubbo Regional Council has announced the appointment of Andrew Willsmore as its new General Manager. Mr Willsmore has been the CEO at Alice Springs Town Council for just over 2 years, where the announcement of his departure was made late last week, saying that he would be taking an opportunity closer to home. At Alice Springs, Mr Willsmore has overseen major community projects during his time there, including the Adventure Park at the Aquatic and Leisure Centre and the Newlands Skate and Play Precinct, and early work on the town centre regeneration and a new library. Mayor Astor Hill has thanked Mr Willsmore for his leadership, saying the projects will leave a lasting impact for the community. Recruitment for a new Alice Springs CEO will begin soon. Mr Willsmore is said to be taking up his new role in Dubbo in late May. As Blacktown City Council seeks permission for a rate rise, some councillors have questions about the increasing cost of its administration centre plans. The Sydney Morning Herald reported that the projected cost of 2 new administration buildings has jumped from $144 million in 2023 to $605 million now. The council sold its CBD land, including the current offices, to Walker Corporation for $42 million, and is now leasing the chambers back for up to a decade at more than $2 million a year. Councillor Carol Israel says the blowout is hard to comprehend. A council spokesperson says the early estimate was a narrow concept, and the new figure reflects a broader scope and site costs. With Western Sydney International Airport due to open within months, Penrith City Council says the next big question is how the region will move. Mayor Todd Carney says the push for a full north-south rail line has now been placed on Infrastructure Australia's 2026 priority list, but it's one of dozens of projects still waiting for funding. The council wants clear commitments from both the Australian and New South Wales governments. A legal fight over a council's bill is now in the hands of the New South Wales Supreme Court, according to ABC News, with Broken Hill City Council and its former lawyers waiting for a decision. The council is trying to claw back fees from Redenbach Legal and Principal Solicitor Keith Redenbach after years of litigation linked to renovations at the Broken Hill Civic Centre. Mayor Tom Kennedy has previously said the total topped $10 million. In court, barristers argued over conflicting evidence, and the council accused Redenbach of billing more than 24 hours in a day, which he denies. Justice Elizabeth Peden has reserved judgment. The Great Western Highway at Victoria Pass will stay closed for at least 3 months after a major geotechnical failure at Mitchell's Causeway made the road unsafe. In a statement published to Lithgow Council's website, New South Wales Minister for Roads and Minister for Regional Transport, Jenny Aitchison, said there'll be no shortcuts on safety, and the government wants people to have clear advice they can plan around. Transport for New South Wales will run extra trains between Bathurst and Mount Victoria, add free turn-up-and-go coaches between Bathurst and Katoomba, and adjust school and route buses around Lithgow. Bondi is trying to bottle something you can't really put on a billboard, that feeling that draws people back to the beach and keeps local businesses ticking over. Waverley Council has launched the Bondi Feeling, a destination marketing push to lure Sydney-siders to rediscover the precinct and spend locally. Mayor Will Namesh says it's about reminding people what makes Bondi unique, from the surf to the cafes, and making sure there's something for everyone. Transport for New South Wales and the Department of Local Government are moving to tighten the rules around shared e-bikes and e-scooters after years of complaints about clutter and safety. A new law requires operators to be approved by Transport and meet minimum standards for things like helmets, parking, insurance and data sharing, with penalties for breaches. Councils and other land managers will also get stronger powers to set conditions such as mandatory parking bays, no-go zones and slow zones, and to fine operators when devices are left in the wrong place. With the new legislation passed late last year by Parliament, the state is now consulting on the draft regulations, and submissions are due by Monday the 4th of May. And Woollahra Mayor Sarah Dixon has quietly welcomed a first child, according to the Daily Telegraph, with residents finding out through recent social media posts showing the newborn in a carrier while Councillor Dixon keeps doing council duties. In one post, Councillor Dixon flags accessibility along the Rose Bay Promenade, saying it matters more to her now. Followers quickly offered congratulations, surprised there'd been no formal announcement of the pregnancy or the birth. The article says Ms Dixon's account is usually focused on council and community issues, and she's kept this part of her life private. And fair enough too. But congratulations to the Mayor of Woollahra, Sarah Dixon. Also making news, Singleton Council says it's switching on a cleaner, cheaper energy future with a $2.74 million upgrade across 3 key sites. The program is backed by $1.371 million from the Australian Government, matched by council funding. Coffs Harbour Council has adopted a 10-year active transport plan after almost 200 public submissions. Mayor Nikki Williams says support was strong, but people raised safety concerns, including lighting along key routes. And Kiama Council is backing the New South Wales Plastics Plan 2.0, aimed at cutting litter and microplastics before they reach waterways. A 3-year statewide study found microplastics in every coastal waterway sampled. In Kiama, the Minamurra River rated very high, with Crooked River and Werry Lagoon also showing elevated levels. This is the Local Government News Roundup. It's episode number 563, recorded on Monday the 16th of March. Let's head to Queensland, where Amazon Australia has broken ground on a $750 million fulfilment centre at Greater Flagstone in the city of Logan, south of Brisbane. The Queensland Government says the site will run around the clock, covering more than 140,000 square metres and creating about 1,000 ongoing jobs after a major construction build. Logan Mayor John Raven said his city was the perfect place for Amazon to invest, as it's the youngest and fastest growing city in Queensland, which is why attracting high-paying technology jobs to Logan is so important. Deputy Premier Jared Blagey said the project was approved in a record 35 business days. Cairns Regional Council has declared Level 4 water restrictions after heavy overnight rainfall caused water treatment operations to be paused. The council said high turbidity in the catchment forced treatment plants offline, leaving the region dependent on water stored in reservoirs. Under Level 4 restrictions, water usage is limited to drinking, cooking and bathing only. Noosa Council has bought a 121-hectare property at Kin using money from the Environment Levy and is locking it in for permanent conservation. The land sits in a key wildlife corridor linking the Wundum Plateau with the Kalula section of the Great Sandy National Park. Mayor Frank Wilkie says protecting the site will safeguard habitat for threatened species, including koalas, greater gliders and powerful owls. The City of Moreton Bay is urging state and federal governments to move faster on housing, saying the pressure is already being felt across the community. Mayor Peter Flannery says more than 6,000 people are now on the city's social housing waitlist, and the council wants a fairer share of funding to tackle homelessness and housing insecurity. Councillor Flannery says the council has pitched a supportive housing model, combining stable homes with on-site services for people with complex needs. There's a renewed focus on the future of Queensland's koalas, with Redlands City Council preparing a submission on the state's new draft conservation strategy. Council officers say the latest plan did not give local government enough mapping, funding or clear standards, and they want the state to take a stronger lead on monitoring and habitat data. Redland Bayside News reported the council is urging a tougher goal too, aiming for a net gain in habitat, not just no net loss, as South East Queensland grows. The submission also questions proposed changes that could allow more clearing on larger lots and calls for better compliance. Redland's own report notes koala numbers in the Koala Coast fell about 80% between 1996 and 2014. Whipping round the rest of the nation, in Tasmania, Hobart City Council is winding back a traffic change from its Collins Street bike lane trial after Christmas congestion backed up cars leaving the Centre Point car park. Pulse Tasmania reported that Victoria Street will return to 2 exit lanes onto Collins Street, reversing a single-lane setup from the first stage. Deputy Lord Mayor Zelinda Sherlock says the single lane improved pedestrian safety for most of the trial, but created delays in the pre-Christmas peak, and the council wants to see how 2 lanes affect the block's overall function. Stage 2 works start this week. Port Adelaide Enfield Council in South Australia has voted to pursue a smoke-free zone along the Semaphore Foreshore Central Plaza after strong community backing. The council will apply to Preventive Health South Australia with the Health Minister to make the final call. But councillors were split according to Adelaide Now, with some arguing the ban should also cover parts of Semaphore Road, while others worried about the cost and the burden of enforcement. After 14 years around the council table, Coolgardie Shire councillor Tracy Rathbone has resigned, effective last week. Ms Rathbone says she made the decision after a period of reflection about her commitments, and in her letter she backed the current council and staff to keep delivering the outcomes set by the minister and to rebuild trust in the organisation. Shire President Paul Wilcox thanked Ms Rathbone for her service, calling her experience and community work invaluable. The Shire will keep operating with 6 elected members, and if it's advised that a replacement is required, an extraordinary election will be held. Albany is getting more time to adapt to the end of reticulated gas in town after the City Council negotiated with ATCO Gas to make the CBD the final area to be decommissioned. The council says the city centre is the engine room for local retail and hospitality, and many small businesses rely on gas to operate. Mayor Greg Stocks says rushing the change risks closures and job losses and a hit to Albany's vibrancy and tourism economy. In Kalgoorlie-Boulder, councillors are being asked to consider waiving airport fees to help bring back direct flights to Melbourne. The Kalgoorlie Miner reported that a confidential business case from the local chamber is pushing for a full 1-year waiver, arguing it's the fastest way to restart the route. But city staff are recommending a 50% subsidy instead, saying industry and local businesses should share the cost. The report warns the lost revenue would hit the city budget and higher passenger numbers could add security and operating costs. And the Swan Valley Visitor Centre has taken out another national win, claiming gold in the Visitor Information Services category at the Qantas National Tourism Awards held in Fremantle. It's the centre's second straight year on top in a field of around 500 tourism centres nationwide. City of Swan Mayor Tanya Richardson says the award reflects the work of visitor centre staff and the local tourism operators who help make the Swan Valley a standout destination. Today's Global Report will be up soon, but before that, I'm being joined by Diane Kalen-Sukra with an update on preparations for the second Global Civility Summit. Believe it or not, we're just a month away from the second Global Civility Summit, with Diane Kalen-Sukra getting ready to tackle this topic, perhaps in a new and different way than 18 months ago. Diane's with me now. Hello, Diane. Great to have you back on the show.
Great to be with you again, Chris.
And the summit, number 2, obviously you felt there's still a need to bring people together on the topic. It's fast approaching, and what's the level of interest been like?
Oh, it's been fantastic. As you remember, as my co-host, Chris, in 24, when we launched the inaugural Global Civility Summit, it was really, to a large extent, about naming the problem. And a lot of leaders were feeling the weight of this toxicity and the polarization and the online abuse. But it was kind of personal. Civility was still being treated as something potentially soft or optional or maybe only taking place in certain areas. So we were able to gather people and start to talk about the fact that this is a pattern. This is actually happening everywhere. But this time, the interest in the summit feels a bit different. It's more focused. It's more intentional. People are coming to Civility Summit 2024. They're not just curious about civility as an idea. They're actually leaders who want to maximize their ability to lead well in uncivil times, because they're dealing with heated council meetings, divided communities, volatile social media. And so they're asking, how can I maximize my impact on civic culture as a leader? So it's now being seen much more as a multi-pronged problem, as opposed to just something you may be facing, in your particular workplace or council. So the energy around the summit is more around doing the work. And we are attracting mayors, councillors, city managers, clerks, civic leaders who are willing to look at their own habits to learn new tools and to reset the culture around them. And so in a sense, the level of interest is not just high, it's actually deeper.
So I guess the big point there, Diane, is people who participated last time who might have been thinking, I've already done this. This will actually take it to the next level. It'll be different to what occurred in Summit number 1.
Absolutely. And, really one of the biggest differences of this year's summit really goes back to 2018 for me, because that was the year that I left my role as a city manager and I wrote Save Your City, How Toxic Culture Kills Community and What to Do About It. And that book is what launched the Civility Tour that ultimately connected us, but it's also exposed a real gap in mainstream civic leadership education. So I saw then that civic leaders and frontline public servants were being trained in finance and bylaws and procedures, but not in that deeper wisdom and resilience needed to lead through toxicity, through mob dynamics and prolonged crises like we're seeing today. So historically, what's fascinating is that civic leaders used to have this kind of formational training. It was part of the program. So we think back as far as, for instance, the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius. Like he was in power for 20 years and he faced wars on multiple fronts, betrayal, political intrigue, devastating plagues, massive personal losses, including the loss of his children. But it was through years of training with philosophers that he developed the inner discipline that allowed him to keep serving the common good in the midst of all this toxicity and challenges. So when I founded Kalen Academy, which is actually hosting this summit as an online civic leadership academy, it was to bring that ancient wisdom into today's civic leaders and connect them with modern neuroscience and best leadership practices. And so that's what changed. That's what makes this summit different, because now more leaders recognize that gap and they've felt the cost of toxicity in their communities and that the need for deeper tools. So with this summit, we've tried to resurrect this beautiful practice from the civic academies of old, where scholars don't just stay in ivory towers. They come into the public square with us to wrestle with the issues of the day alongside office holders, civic leaders, and citizens. So this year, we've invited world-renowned thinkers to engage with us on these issues at the Civility Summit. So we have, as you know, that Canada has a philosopher of civility by the name of Mark Kingwell. He'll help us see what an imperative civility is to leadership and good governance. Donna Hicks, who is Harvard University's conflict resolution expert, she will bring to us her lifelong work on dignity and how it's actually violations of dignity that fuel conflict, and how honoring dignity can actually transform it and help heal society. We have Josiah Ober, who is Stanford University's one of the world-leading scholars on ancient democracy, and he'll help us look at how resilient democracies have done, how they have passed through these turbulent times in the past. We have the New York Times bestselling author Kim Scott, author of Radical Candor, and she brings a really powerful lens on how to tell the truth, how to give hard feedback, and still care personally in difficult situations, something that every civic leader needs in these difficult environments today. And finally, we also have Seth Kaplan, who is Johns Hopkins University professor, who will look at looks at fragile states and communities and the importance of us focusing on neighborhoods and relationships when it comes to addressing toxicity and civic renewal. So together they help us connect all these dots, but we don't stop there. We actually have paired these thinkers at the Civility Summit with over a dozen frontline civic leaders, mayors, councillors, CAOs, clerks, and community builders who are leading with civility every day, including a judge who has spearheaded a civility revolution in his community.
Right. It's sensational. Sounds like a great program. I want to ask you, Diane, before we remind people how they get involved in the summit, do you think we've made progress since last time?
Well, I really do feel that we have made inroads, and I would describe them in terms of awareness, culture, accountability, and courage. So in the last summit, since then, there's been a lot more awareness of the magnitude and the depth of the problem. I don't think people see incivility now as just a case of a few bad meetings or some nasty comments online. I think people are increasingly understanding that what we're really talking about is civic culture, the norms and the habits that shape how we treat each other, how we disagree, how we exercise power, and whether or not we want to live in a democracy. So once you see that it's not one bad incident or one bad actor, it's about renewing culture, then it means, like, the question is, what do we do? It's not just about firefighting, just reacting to each toxic blow up. And I think there's that understanding is out there. So leaders are talking more about how do we reestablish democratic norms, standards of debate, respect for process, dignity, and how we handle disagreement as well. And I think another major important inroad is that more civic organizations are beginning to actually measure their culture and treat toxic culture as a culture risk, like not just an HR issue. So when Save Your City came out in 2018, calling on municipalities and organizations to treat toxic culture as a risk, it seemed like a really distant idea. But now we see plenty of organizations, including the Victorian Local Government Association, which actually is leading in this space, commissioning, serious research into the culture and publishing those reports, raising awareness, things we didn't have in the past. Yes. And of course, I really do see, Chris, a change in leaders themselves. More of them are willing to push back. More of them are getting the muscle to stand up to toxic behaviors and draw the important boundaries that we need to bring about greater civility and to tackle toxicity in our communities.
Yes, I've noticed that as well. And the VLGA, of course, is supporting this Global Civility Summit coming up next month. I was thinking, Diane, as you were talking there, Saviour City sort of elevated the conversation here, but there's only so many times you can read that, so it's about time for a new book, isn't it?
Oh, it absolutely is. And in fact, so we now have a companion to Saviour City called Lead with Civility, which actually takes the roadmap to renewing civic culture, which Saviour City established by looking at examples throughout history of communities that have faced civic decay and then brought about civic renewal through leadership and actions of individuals and civic leaders. And it actually brings it into practice. So the Lead with Civility is a handbook for leaders who refuse to surrender public life to the contempt and the chaos and the fear that we see today. And it strongly challenges this idea that might is right, which I think has infected both leaders and citizens, and shows how doing right by each other actually strengthens our communities and institutions. And so, yeah, it's a handbook for leaders who want to change the culture, not just survive it.
And when's that coming out?
Well, it should be out just in time for the Civility Summit.
Right.
And potentially a bit sooner, but definitely just in time for it.
Look out for that. And we'll certainly publicise the release of that on the Local Government News Roundup, because I know a lot of our listeners follow your work with great interest and will no doubt be also participating in the Global Civility Summit coming up in April. So to find out more, to book your place, to make sure you don't miss out, Diane, best way to go about that?
Oh, Kalen Academy, that's Kalen Academy.com/Civility Summit is where you can learn more and register.
I am looking forward to co-hosting this with you again. Thank you so much for inviting me back. Very important work, and looking forward to having lots of people involved and taking this to the next level. Diane, lovely to chat as always, and we'll see you again very soon, as it turns out, for the Global Civility Summit.
Absolutely. Always great to be with you, Chris.
Time now for the Global Report. We're heading to New Zealand firstly. And while on the topic of incivility and the toll it takes on people in public life, Masterton District Council Chief Executive Kim Fell has spoken out about his recent experience. He says while leadership in local government comes with scrutiny, a line is crossed when debate turns personal. Kim said a Ratepayers Association post singled out where he lives, implying it disqualifies him from the job. But Kim says the commute is about 25 minutes and that the work is about delivering services and infrastructure with integrity, not chasing popularity. The bigger worry, Kim says, is that targeted attacks are becoming normal, and that could push capable people away from public leadership. He's urging people to argue policy and performance and leave the personal shots out of it. The green light has been given to what's being described as New Zealand's first AI factory data centre, a massive campus planned for near Invercargill. The project includes its own substation and could eventually draw about 280 megawatts of power, making it one of New Zealand's biggest electricity users. Data Grid New Zealand says it chose Southland for renewable power and a cooler climate and expects more than 1,200 skilled jobs during construction. Telco News reported that Southland District Council, Environment Southland and Invercargill City Council have approved the campus along with associated electricity infrastructure. The company's also secured approvals for a new undersea cable landing at Ariti Beach, which it says would be the first international subsea connection to New Zealand's South Island. A new transfer agreement between Waikato District Council and Hamilton City Council is clearing the way for the new water services entity, IAY. Waikato District Mayor Axel Beck says the deal is about long-term investment in water infrastructure while also protecting the health of the Waikato River. A draft strategy suggests combining services could soften future water charge rises, with forecast household increases now under half earlier projections. IAY is set to begin operating on July 1st. In the UK, Reform UK leader Nigel Farage is distancing himself from the party's role at Worcestershire County Council, saying he wishes we hadn't bothered taking minority control of what he calls a virtually bankrupt authority. BBC News reported that the council has approved a council tax rise of almost 9%, far above the usual 5% cap, to close a budget shortfall and avoid effective bankruptcy. Reform says it inherited a mess and claims it's acting out of civic duty. while cutting spending and freezing vacant jobs. To Canada, Edmonton's mayor says a senior police trip to Israel has damaged trust with marginalised communities, and it's forcing a new look at who approves travel. According to CTV News, Mayor Andrew Knack has asked the Edmonton Police Commission to review its policies after the police chief joined a February delegation described as an educational visit. Councillor Erin Rutherford says some residents feel their efforts to build bridges with police have been undone and wants the Commission and police to listen to people who say the trip caused harm. And finally to the US. In Baltimore, an Inspector General report is raising fresh questions about how taxpayer money is used inside the Mayor's office and what the City Council will do next. The review covers spending from mid-2022 to late 2025 and cites more than $800,000 on food and catering, including more than $52,000 in stadium suites. It also flags spending on flowers and staff events and about $167,000 in purchases that lacked required prior approval. Inspector General Isabel Cumming says the same rules should apply to everyone. So far, Fox 45 Baltimore says it sought comment from the 15 council members, but none have yet responded. And it's easy to think stormwater is something cities should rush to get rid of, but planners at nearly 36 municipalities in the Kansas City region are trying a different idea: soak it up where it falls. A new regional manual urges cities to use sponge approaches like rain gardens, permeable paving, green roofs and healthier soils to capture and filter runoff before it hits creeks and rivers. Supporters say it can cut flooding, curb pollution and make neighbourhoods greener, but each council will still need to adopt its own rules. The goal is to design development that treats water as an asset, not just a problem. And that's our podcast for today. I hope you found something of interest in today's issue. As always, head to our website or the transcript for links to further details on the stories we include. This was edition number 563, recorded on the morning of Monday, the 16th of March, 2026. Comments or feedback can be sent by email to lgweeklynews@gmail.com. Our podcast is brought to you by the Victorian Local Governance Association, the national broadcaster on all things local government. We receive support from Symphony 3, simple, connected customer experiences, and Rath Engineering Development, smarter local government systems built from real on-the-ground experience. The Local Government News Roundup is recorded in the city of Greater Geelong, Victoria, on the land of the Wadawurrung people of the Kulin Nation. Until next time, thanks for listening and bye for now. Support for the Roundup comes from Symphony 3. Councils around the country are working hard to keep their communities safe and prepared before, during and after emergencies such as bushfires and floods. And in recent weeks, Symphony 3 has been working with councils around Victoria, including Greater Bendigo, Mildura, Ararat and Golden Plains, to create emergency dashboards, pulling together live data including weather, traffic, emergency incidents, unplanned and planned disruptions, news and social media feeds. An emergency dashboard is cost-effective and can be deployed in just 3 days. Find out more at www.symphony3.com.